And good evening. This is Mottek On Money. We're doing it live here, weeknights in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek On Money 5 nights a week for you, live on the air here in 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast for you at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms. Straight to the news on the Middle East tonight. The Israeli Defense Forces confirming that Islamic Jihad's failed rocket had destroyed a Gaza hospital, leading a still unclear number of deaths. The IDF says it has multiple intelligence sources that had confirmed that Islamic Jihad and not Israel were responsible, despite accusations by Hamas and some other countries, according to the Jerusalem Post. Only a couple of hours before, the door seemed to be left open by the IDF spokesman's office, which said it needed to study the issue, but already sometime into the controversy, videos and hints emerged matching a failed rocket launch, the timing of that hospital being hit. We're watching what's happening closely in the Middle East, and President Biden heading to Israel. We'll discuss the situation in the Middle East tonight. I'll discuss the very latest with Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk and recipient of the Medal of Valor from the Simon Wiesenthal Center in West Los Angeles for defending human rights and highlighting the ongoing courageous protests by women in Iran against the Islamic Republic. Taking a look at what happened with the financial markets today, a mixed finish on Wall Street. We see the Dow Jones Industrial Average managed a closing gain of 13 points. The S&P 500 dipped about a half point, and the Nasdaq down 34 points. Looks like about 10% of the S&P 500 index companies are set to report earnings this week, and the majority of those that have already done so have been beating expectations of both earnings and revenues. Results from J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo this week were mostly well-received by traders on Friday. And today it was in fact, the big dog on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, out with earnings, and Bank of America and BNY Mellon all produced results beating Wall Street analysts' expectations. Bond yields, well, let's see, they climbed again today with the yield on the 10-year note hitting 4.85%. That was the highest seen since 2007. That means mortgage rates are on the rise again at or near 23-year highs this week. I'll discuss what's happening with mortgage rates this evening with Fred Solomon, the president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty based in Orange County. Looks like NVIDIA has widened a ban on AI tech products to China and could delay its current rollout, but did not foresee a meaningful financial impact near term. NVIDIA, among the casualties of the day, slipping significantly today. We'll take a closer look at that coming up. In fact, let's get right to your money. The markets and the economy now, and the world on pins and needles over two wars now. The war in Israel against Hamas and the Russian invasion of Ukraine ongoing. Joining us live now is money manager Gabriel Wisdom, managing director of American Money Management, based here in Southern California, and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here. Obviously a nervous time for everyone, and including in the financial markets. Give us your view of what's happening right now.
Well, Frank, 50 years ago, October 1973, Israel was hit in an attack by Arab armies from Egypt and Jordan and Syria. And there was the Yom Kippur War. And then a week ago, we know what happened, the surprise attack by Hamas terrorists. And we've seen these war cycles occur in the Middle East before. The previous geopolitical crises there have tended to be short-lived. The sell-offs in the stock market historically have also been buying opportunities. But this particular crisis hasn't affected us here in the U.S. Yet, maybe because the price of oil hasn't spiked as a result of the development. Now, if the war extends to oil-producing countries, well, then I would expect a similar kind of down cycle to occur.
Right. We did see that initial spike a couple times last week, last Monday, and again on Friday, and it's been bouncing around. Let's see, right now, oil hovering at around $88 a barrel, obviously still pretty high. And we're seeing the results at Southern California gas pumps, which have slipped only slightly from the recent highs. A regular gas now $5.74 a gallon on average. In Los Angeles, premium still up there at $6.11. And diesel, which still is pretty much in the blood of the economy, at $6.35 a gallon on average. So stubbornly high prices fueling inflation, which has been running hot lately. So where do you see gas and oil prices go from here? And obviously the Fed watching inflation. Where do you see inflation go from here?
We're seeing a weaker trend in fuel consumption. Some are calling it a demand destruction cycle. But we had the very high prices in mid-September. Obviously, oil is near $90 a barrel now, but gas prices are actually down. Even oil futures have risen about 5% since the Israel-Hamas war started, but that jump hasn't stopped the downward trend in gas prices. In California, gasoline is down close to 20 cents per gallon. Now, there's a seasonal fall, usually begins around this time of the year. And one AAA spokesman told Yahoo Finance, I happened to see it earlier today, that gas prices will likely keep dropping until the end of the year. Let's hope for that. But it's very different from last year because refined product supply has increased, and there's just too much of it around at perhaps too high a price for the moment.
All right, the Fed getting set to meet at the end of this month, and we'll get another decision on interest rates and a statement on the economy. And what do you think is going to happen this time around?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, Frank, if the Fed does take a pause. What happened here with the last meeting was we heard a lot of rhetoric about higher for longer interest rates, and we're ready to push rates higher. But for the past 90 years, the 10-year Treasury yield, the sweet spot, has been right about where we are, somewhere between 4.5% and 4.8%, the sweet spot for economic growth and for stock prices. The higher interest rates have always been associated with higher growth and higher price-to-earnings multiples. And sure enough, we've got retail sales that just shot the lights out. The numbers today were double expectations. So we have a resilient consumer. At the same time, we've got high enough interest rates to affect a number of industries. The banks reported. You mentioned Bank of America and J.P. Morgan, and I mean they're benefiting from the higher interest rates. That's how it's supposed to work. Tomorrow we'll get Tesla's earnings, and that'll provide some insight into the effect of the higher borrowing costs.
All right, and AI having its big year this year. Remember, we saw that huge rally with NVIDIA leading the charge today. NVIDIA taking a more than $21 plunge to $439 in change on the news here related to China. And NVIDIA said a widened U.S. ban on AI tech products to China could delay its current rollout, and NVIDIA stock moving lower by nearly 5%, and again lower in the after-hours trading here. What's your view on NVIDIA and the hot AI names at this point?
Well, it's pretty interesting because the government's role, or the Biden administration anyway, the objective is to hamper China's military development. They want to close loopholes in certain regulations that would allow China to have access to advanced semiconductors that could create breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, and especially as it relates to sophisticated computers that are critical to the military applications in China. Now, NVIDIA and Intel have created some special chips for the Chinese market that had the powerful computing capabilities but limited the communication speeds. I understand those haven't been affected by this new legislation, but in any event, AI is on a forward march. I think this is just highlights how important these chips are and how the AI advances are just changing the way we live.
Millions of listeners and thousands of 5-star reviews rave about the hit podcast series In the Red Clay, the unbelievable story of Billy Sunday Burt, the most dangerous man in Georgia history.
He was a whiskey man, bank robber, hitman. He was a murderer. He's also my father.
Seasons 1 and 2 are available to binge right now, and bonus episodes are coming soon. Imperative Entertainment presents In the Red Clay. Get the podcast wherever you listen.
Live with money manager Gabriel Wisdom, and of course we've talked a lot about politics and the markets in the past, and you've always said that the market likes divided government, but now we have no action in the House whatsoever with this Speaker election now falling short in the initial vote, a second ballot plan now for tomorrow. What about the impact of the House basically being shut down at this point?
Well, Frank, it's actually disturbing, but at the same time, they're not getting anything done, which is exactly what we like. When they legislate, that means shifts and changes occur, and that with that comes uncertainty. So what's occurring now is quite nice for financial markets. In fact, the holiday forecast is quite buoyant. The holiday season actually begins in less than 2 weeks, November 1, and so far we're seeing very strong indications from retailers that came out today. The shopping season, which runs until December 24, looks to be really good. Last year we saw a nice jump, and this year expects to be pretty darn good. And then we're going into the fourth year of a four-year presidential cycle. And generally, the incumbent administration doesn't like to mess with success if they're lucky enough to get it because they want a second term.
On that retail spending report we got for the month of September, up 0.7%. That beat analysts' expectations. And taking out auto sales, retail sales still popped 0.6% last month. Economists were expecting just a 0.2% increase. So if people are still buying costumes for their pets, things may not be that bad, right? What is your assessment of things as we head into the holiday season this year? Of course, the holiday season seems to get earlier and earlier every year.
Well, that's right. We used to see that as a contrary indicator, actually a recession kind of a tell, like a poker tell. If the Santas, the dressed-up Santas were on the street corners trying to drum up a business for Macy's or whoever, too early, or if the holiday decorations go up before Thanksgiving, a very negative sign that retailers are desperate. But this time around, so much of it is happening online that it's quite different environment. And if we return to a more normal environment vis-a-vis inflation, which appears to be the case, inflation is subsiding at least slowly, that could bode quite well.
All right, it should be noted the 10-year note yield all the way up to the highest seen since 2007, impacting fixed-rate mortgage rates. Now the yield on the 10-year note at 4.85%. I'll be talking more about mortgage rates later this hour, but what about that and the impact on real estate here?
Frank, this is the least affordable housing market in 4 decades. And now the Justice Department, the Department of Justice anyway, is investigating residential real estate brokerage fees. And this began under the Trump administration, and the National Association of Realtors agreed to some measures, including some increased price transparency. But by and large, it's a 6% commission market with a split between the selling agent and the buying agent. And those are the highest real estate rates, the commission rates in the world. I mean, in Australia, for example, in the UK, they run about 2% gross to buy or sell real estate. I think with a difficult housing market, the worst in 4 decades, it wouldn't be surprising to me to see some pricing some pricing shifts in the commission structure. That's what happened on Wall Street.
On the live with Gabriel Wisdom. At this point, Gabriel, where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, the weight loss drug thing is very big business. It could even hurt fast food sales, according to some analysts' expectations. Novo Nordisk, a symbol NVO, Eli Lilly, symbol LLY, look interesting to me. I like the exchange-traded funds that include all the major drug manufacturers. I think this is a mega trend. And then also, I'm still interested in silver. If the price ratio between gold and silver were to revert back to its historical average, then silver prices would be substantially higher than they are. It's around $23 an ounce right now. There's 16 times more silver than there is gold in the Earth's crust. If you do the math, I mean, during the inflationary 1970s, the ratio between gold and silver was exactly 16 to 1. Right now, it's way out of whack. I mean, 1 ounce buys you 84 ounces of silver. 1 ounce of gold buys 84 ounces of silver. That's out of line. I expect over the long run higher silver prices.
All right, we've seen some action in the cryptos lately. You're not someone that has the laser eyes on, but you watch what's happening with the cryptos along with everything else. Any observations on how the cryptos have been performing lately?
Well, it appears that Bitcoin, if anybody's going to win in the crypto space, it will be Bitcoin. Fidelity came out with a report, I believe it was this morning, saying, that Bitcoin is a real asset. Get used to it. And with regard to hard money kinds of, or more kinds of alternatives to currency, Costco has been selling gold 1 ounce bars, and they're selling them 4.3% above the spot price. And as soon as they list them for sale on the Costco website, they sell out. So there's a big demand for alternative currencies. That would be gold. It certainly would be certain kinds of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin. And then if an exchange-traded fund is approved by the SEC that follows the price of Bitcoin, then it would be far more legitimate.
And it should also be noted, as CoinDesk is reporting, Governor Newsom signed a crypto licensing bill recently, set to take effect in July of 2025. So we still have some time to look it over and talk about it. Considered California's answer to New York's BIT license, the Digital Financial Assets Law faced heavy industry criticism, but was passed by the state's assembly in September of 2022. The law requires California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation to create a regulatory framework for crypto. So California looking to take action to regulate crypto, and that might have an impact. We see right now Bitcoin down to just about $20 here at $28,440. It has rebounded from recent lows, so we will keep an eye on that one, Gabriel. Anything else you'd like to mention at this point with so much going on here at the moment?
Well, Frank, I thought it was interesting that Birkenstock went public. This is a 249-year-old company. And, of course, they got a big boost from the Hollywood movie Barbie, where Margot Robbie trades in her heels for a light pink pair of Birkenstock. The company went public and had a terrible debut, and a number of other companies have pulled their initial public offerings because the mood for IPOs is just not strong enough. That's kind of a bearish signal. So I'm watching the IPO market to get it's a straw in the wind, let's say, to get some indication of which way the wind is blowing there.
All right, and it sounds like you're in no hurry to rush out and buy Birkenstocks either.
No, that was a long time ago, back in the 1970s.
Right. Those shoes have been around a long time. Well, Gabriel, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here tonight. That is Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director of American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Live with us here tonight on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Friends, if you're hurt in an accident, you need an experienced advocate, and Clark Fielding and his team of sharks are ready to stand by to dive into your case. My friend Clark the Shark is fearless for justice and your go-to attorney when injured in an accident that wasn't your fault. Whether it's a car accident, slip, trip, fall, or any kind of personal injury, Fielding Law is here to make sure you get the care, attention, and compensation you deserve. Fielding Law can assess the circumstances of the case, negotiate tenaciously with insurance companies, and if necessary, file a lawsuit and litigate to seek fair compensation on behalf of you, the injured party. An injury is a major disruption in your life. Medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, property damage, and other losses incurred as a result of the injury are all part of the damages. Don't try to handle the process alone. You need an expert in the process, and the team at Fielding Law are the ones to trust. Put Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. That number is 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes Daryl Hall with special guest Todd Rundgren coming to the Pantages Theater on November 6th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Can you go for that? Well, right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Call now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Mixed finish for the stock market today, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average coming in for a closing gain of 13 points, eking out a closing gain of 13, while the other major averages slipped. The S&P 500 down a half a point. The NASDAQ down 34 points. We did get some big earnings news today from some of the big banks, including Bank of America. The stock closed of 2.3% after it reported a rise in clients and accounts across its business helped boost its third quarter earnings. We also saw for the big dog on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, out with its earnings news. The stock ended nearly 2% lower, though, after reporting a lower third quarter profit, managed to beat reduced earnings expectations. Taking a look at Lockheed Martin, the defense contractor said that it had net income of $1.7 billion in the third quarter, compared with an income of $1.8 billion in the year earlier period. Lockheed Martin shares are moving up 0.2%. Johnson & Johnson stock down nearly 1% today after the med tech and drug company posted better than expected third quarter earnings and raised its profit guidance. Taking a look at the price of oil, it moved higher today by $1.18 at $86.62 a barrel in New York. At Southern California gas pumps, the damage has been done. Regular now averaging $5.74 a gallon, coming off the recent high. Premium at $6.11, and diesel still up there at $6.35 a gallon. Gold of $1.20 at $1,936.90 an ounce. We see the yield in the 10-year note, the highest seen since 2007. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates. And we're talking to Fred Solomon here shortly about mortgage rates and the real estate business. NVIDIA taking a hit today, down more than $21 at $4.39 and change. And a drug company, Moderna, sliding nearly $6 at 86 and change. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Good evening. Nervous time in the real estate and mortgage business again, with mortgage rates hovering at or near 23-year highs today as bond yields have popped again. The yield in the 10-year note, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, hitting the highest seen since 2007 today. Let's bring in the expert now, Fred Solomon, president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty based in Orange County. Fred, thank you very much for taking the call here with us this evening live, and give us your reaction to this bump in rates again here.
Retail sales data did it again, and, it's inflationary concerns. So the Fed is meeting two more times before the end of the year, November 1st and then December 13th. And there's a 90% chance, there's a 90% chance that the Fed will not be raising interest rates, but it does not help that Fed decision to not raise interest rates at least one more time before the end of the year. And like you said, the yields are the highest they've been since 20-something years. So we're just taking our popcorn and watching the movie and seeing it unfold right before our eyes as to where we're going. But we still have inverted yield curves, which is the first sign of a recession, and we've had inverted yield curves for over 14 months. So it's inevitable that rates on the long-term treasuries will be coming down, but that all depends on CPI,
Get an inside look at Hollywood with Michael Rosenbaum.
Let's get inside of Anthony LaPaglia. My grandmother will be 95 in June.
I haven't drank water in 95 years. Look at me. Do I need water?
You look a little dehydrated.
A little bit. Your skin's a little dry. And when I do drink, it bores me.
Yeah.
Just drinking it, I start to nod off.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.
Unemployment data and stuff like that.
The Fed watching all of that, of course, and so the Fed has the Fed funds rate, which impacts the adjustable rate mortgages, right, which have been rising as well. But they seem to be making a comeback as those benchmark bond yields impact the fixed rates. So what about adjustables here now?
Well, adjustables. I wrote an article that ended up on the front page of the Orange County Register, and basically the article discussed what happens if interest rates go up in 5 years. I'm not an adjustable guy, but for people that got a lot of money in reserves and they can handle an additional $1,000 a month payment if interest rates go up 2 percentage points when the loan adjusts. Hey, God bless them. I'm more of a fixed rate guy. My tattoo on my forearm says 30-year fixed or die, 20 or 15 year. But yeah, adjustables are a lot of the loan officers are interested in selling those because I'm just not that guy. And basically the moral to the article that I wrote that ended up on the front page of the Orange County Register, or the real estate section, it basically said, what happens if rates go up 2%? What's going to happen to home prices, and what's going to happen to foreclosures with higher interest rates? And I wrote that article in June of 2003 when interest rates at that time were in the 4s and 5s. And what happened at that time, it was actually low 5s at that time. But what happened, we saw the worst problem of foreclosures in 2008 when all those 5-year fixed mortgages adjusted. So I'm not a believer, but that doesn't mean it's not a right loan for someone that's got cash in the bank. And when the loan adjusts, they can afford that adjustment, and they don't have to worry about that extra payment if rates go up.
On there live with Fred Solomon, president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty based in Orange County. Are you seeing any downward pressure on prices in all this as mortgage rates have been moving up?
Oh, my God. Like, Orange County is just an anomaly when it comes to the real estate market. Inventory levels are still lower than the pre-pandemic levels. We're still seeing multiple offers down there. And when, inventory levels are low and no one wants to sell because they have a really low rate on their first mortgage, I don't blame them. Like, unless you're selling and paying cash for another property and downsizing. And
right, I think we get it.
On $1 million.
At this point, Fred, any other thoughts about where prices go from here and where mortgage rates go from here?
Well, if I see interest rates come down and I see more inventory, then I can certainly see real estate prices coming down for sure. But in this high interest rate environment, no one wants to sell. And the only people that are selling are people that have to, and those are people that, death in the family and people in foreclosure. But the average Joe doesn't need to sell, and that's the reason why inventory levels are low, because of these higher interest rates.
All right. So in the meantime, is it pretty quiet there in the office, or is there who's buying it right at the moment?
Crickets, Frank, crickets.
That's what we're hearing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Fred, thank you very much for that thorough update on what's happening in the mortgage business and real estate here in the Los Angeles area and in Orange County. That was Fred Solomon, the president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty based in the OC. Home builder sentiment, by the way, has dropped to a 10-month low as mortgage rates have soared. That's another new reading out today, marking the third straight monthly decline in builder confidence. 62% of builders reported offering sales incentives of all forms in October, up from 59% in September, and tied with the previous high for this cycle set in December of 2022. Again, home builder sentiment now at a 10-month low, this in the face of higher mortgage rates. Looks like they're hitting new 23-year highs this week as the yield in the 10-year note, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, hitting the highest we've seen since 2007 just today. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Investors and everyone keeping an eye on geopolitical news, with President Biden now due to visit Israel and neighboring countries in coming days to help hopefully calm nerves that the Israel-Hamas war will cause a widening war in the region. In Washington, the House failed to elect a new speaker, so we're keeping an eye on that as well. President Biden will now only visit Israel and will postpone his travel to Jordan, according to the White House. The postponement of the Amman summit coming after the Palestinian leader withdrew from the scheduled meetings in protest of what's happening. Apparently a missile hit a hospital, which the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza blamed on an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli military, as I mentioned earlier, said it had no involvement and pinned the blame on a misfired Palestinian rocket. Meanwhile, the head of the Israeli Defense Forces warns that if Hezbollah makes a mistake in attacks, they will be annihilated, as Hezbollah continue to conduct anti-tank missile attacks toward Israeli territory this week. Joining us live now and following all of these developments closely is Lisa Dafchari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk and recipient of the Medal of Valor from the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Defending Human Rights and highlighting the ongoing courageous protests by women in Iran. Lisa Dafchari, thank you very much for joining us. Give us your reaction to the latest news here this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. Wow, what a day. Hour by hour, this war seems to be picking up pace and more actors getting involved. we're seeing the war develop on social media as well, as sides are getting heated up, and supporters of Hamas are calling for worldwide protests in front of Israeli consulates. We're already seeing some protests getting in high gear in Lebanon in front of the American embassy in Beirut. And, of course, on the ground in Israel, everything on hold in terms of a ground invasion because of the announcement that President Biden will be making a trip to the region tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And as you said in your introduction, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president, has canceled his meeting with President Biden, and Jordan has done so as well. And this is in reaction to the bombing of the hospital. Israel says it was a misfired missile from the Palestinians, and I want to remind listeners that 20 to 30% of the missiles that are fired from Gaza intended to land in Israel do end up landing in civilian areas in Gaza. So this is nothing new. I've been covering this for almost 2 decades, and I have had many incidents where I am covering smoke inhalation by young Palestinians that are obviously suffering from missiles that were misfired by their own. So this does happen, and of course the Palestinians denying that and saying this was in fact a targeted hit by the Israelis. Bibi Netanyahu's office has denied this and said that we never hit hospitals. This is not something that Israel does or ever would do. They actually paused any reporting on the issue in order to conduct a proper investigation, and then came out definitively saying that this was not an Israeli missile that hit the hospital.
On their air live with Lisa Dafchari, the editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, live with us here on 790 KBC. Now, this cancellation, this Amman summit, certainly reflects an increasingly volatile situation there in the Middle East. Here we have President Biden set to go into the region as Israel prepares to invade Gaza. Give us your assessment of the president's visit here and what's expected to come out of it.
Yeah, I actually will start with Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State's visit to the region. As you may have seen in reports, he went over to Egypt and to Saudi Arabia, as well as visiting with Bibi Netanyahu inside Israel. He got a very, very cold reception from both Egypt and Saudi Arabia, just showing what the temperature of the region is at this moment. He went then back to Israel to see Bibi Netanyahu, and now Biden is on his way. We must assume that the Biden administration would not be making this trip if they had not had something in mind in terms of some sort of de-escalation, some plan, whether it's to ask for Israel not to make the ground invasion into Gaza, whether to ask for a ceasefire, whether to ask Israel to de-escalate in more specific ways. We don't know yet, but we have to assume that they're not going there just to see what's going on. I do think that there is some strategy at play here, particularly because they are trying to meet with neighboring nations. Now, the cancellation by Jordan and President Mahmoud Abbas does throw a wrench into the plans. I think the Biden administration will have to figure something out in terms of getting neighboring nations on board. This has always been the issue. The Palestinian crisis, or I should say the plight of the Palestinians, has been something that neighboring nations have never wanted to help out with. The Jordanians, first and foremost, they are Palestinian people. They are one and the same. And of course, the Egyptians, neighboring nation, has closed its borders recently. They have now said that they will reopen. But it does call into question what will be the future of the region. How will this problem be rectified? And will it get worse before it gets better? And of course, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the North, Lebanon's involvement, and of course, Hezbollah, another proxy of Iran's regime, actually the richest and most endowed in terms of having weapons and more advanced weapons than Hamas, is waiting nearby and has launched some attacks towards Israel, but has not gotten involved in a significant way. Should the Hezbollah get involved in a more significant way, confirming a second front to this war, we're going to be looking at something very, very different. But I think all of that is on hold until we see what unfolds with President Biden's visit tomorrow.
Along with the president going there, we see a second U.S. aircraft carrier has also been sent to the eastern Mediterranean to deter Iran and Hezbollah, according to the Times of Israel. We see Israel fending off Hezbollah attacks at its northern border now, and Iran threatening to join the conflict. Give us your assessment of Iran's role in all this now.
Yeah, well, Iran has been calling the shots, obviously, making the threats that they will get involved and threatening Israel from going in for a ground invasion. It's comical when you think that the White House has tried to sanitize the narrative to say that the Iran regime is not involved when they're actually still calling the shots out on the playing field. Obviously, Iran's regime has not only written the checks for Hamas, but is involved in a very tactical way as well. And that's what everyone is fearful of. If they should get Hezbollah, their other proxy, involved, if they have weapons pointed towards Israel from Syria and Iraq, there are other places where they do have insurgencies and weapons ready to go. They have surrounded Israel, and we are actually watching the unfolding of Iran's war, the Iran regime's war against Israel and its many different proxies. So this absolutely will become more intensified before it de-escalates. But again, with President Biden's trip right in the middle of all of this war, 11 days into it, I think we're going to see a lot more unfold in the next 48 hours.
On the air live with Lisa Dafchari, the editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, live with us here. And certainly the Middle East has always been a powder keg, but now the region could be pushed to the brink. Do you think Israel at this point will go after Iran's nuclear program? And what is your assessment of how close Iran is to having nuclear weapons?
Right, and I always answer this question with, we're assuming that they don't already have a nuclear weapon because of all the time and access they have had to getting one. And we know that there has been, where we say, where there's a will, there's a way, and they may already have a nuclear weapon. What we do know is the last 3 years, very vital sanctions were removed from Iran's regime from the Biden administration. There has been talk of another nuclear deal, which has given them the confidence to move forward. But at the same time, the centrifuges have been spinning. 27 or more IAEA cameras have been shut off, meaning surveillance has been shut off, and access has been denied to the UN inspectors who have gone to check. So we really don't know what is going on, but we do know that they have shown interest and a motivation to move forward with their nuclear program. We have seen different reports talking about the Iran regime being anywhere from weeks to months away, meaning that they are very close to delivering a nuclear weapon and already having the material to deliver one. Now, with that being said, Israel, to the first part of your question, Israel has always had incredible surveillance on Iran's nuclear program, weapons program, and the speed at which it is advancing. They have made very targeted attacks against their weapons depots, their stockpiles that we have heard of. There's a hack inside Iran. There have been targeted strikes both in Iran and in Syria. And that is something that Iran cannot afford to take its eyes off of. It's an existential threat and continues to be one. So right now we're fighting something much more heated on the ground that's active, but Israel has been monitoring Iran's nuclear program for a very long time. So I don't think this is something that is going to be very new for Israel in terms of watching its back or watching Iran's nuclear program. They knew this. They know that they had been moving weapons around. They knew about the deliveries being made to Hezbollah in Lebanon, into Syria, into Iraq. And unfortunately, we don't know why there was a lapse in intelligence in terms of sniffing out this particular attack by Hamas. But again, we're going to be finding out much more. I don't think many of us know the exact reason as to why Israel did not know about this attack and why they were caught off guard, or whether the United States did not have any intel or anything like that either.
Yes.
But I think we're going to be finding out much more about why that is.
And we'll keep an open line to you, Lisa. Thank you very much for taking the call tonight. Lisa Dafchari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk and recipients of the Medal of Valor from the Simon Wiesenthal Center here in Los Angeles. Live with us here tonight. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Royal Oaks. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Millions of listeners and thousands of five-star reviews rave about the hit podcast series In the Red Clay, the unbelievable story of Billy Sunday Burt, the most dangerous man in Georgia history.
He was a whiskey man, bank robber, hitman. He was a murderer. He's also my father.
Seasons 1 and 2 are available to binge right now, and bonus episodes are coming soon. Imperative Entertainment presents In the Red Clay. Get the podcast wherever you listen.